Hi, and welcome to the very first episode of the Scratch at 50 podcast. I'm going to be doing one of these every single week, and it'll be released every Thursday. We're going to try and cover all of the current topics in golf, and that could be professional golf, amateur golf, rules of golf, could be absolutely anything. And today's first episode is about what's next for Liv Golf and who I think is going to be the next big signing from the PGA Tour. Okay, let's get cracking. So, let's quickly get the elephant in the room out of the way. I fully understand that there's some people out there who just do not like Liv Golf. And if you are one of those, I totally understand. And you might want to just turn this podcast off right now because you may not even want to know about it, talk about it, whatever. I totally understand. For me, there's two types of golf. There's traditional golf and there's Liv Golf. These two things are completely different and should be treated as two different entities. Now, if you like traditional golf, 72-hole stroke play with a cut, no music, then I totally understand why you would not like Liv Golf. But Liv Golf is not aimed at you, the traditional golfer. It's trying to attract a new audience to golf. Now, I do watch both and I enjoy the PGA Tour and I enjoy watching Liv Golf as well. But I don't confuse the two things. I know I am watching two different things when I tune in. And I think if you do that, then you've got a chance of appreciating each one of these two very different tours. So right now, we have a big divide in professional golf. And it is absolutely catastrophic across the whole of the spectrum, okay? So the first thing that needs to happen here is these two people need to get together, come to a conclusion, and actually bring the professional game back so we're all playing in the same events, or at least in some of the events. Now, I actually agree with what Padraig Harrington said maybe a couple of months ago, where he said, actually, having two competitive tours is not necessarily a bad thing, as long as there are some events where all of the people come back together. And he went back in the day when I was, a young, keen golfer, and Seve and Nick Faldo and Ian Woosnam and Sandy Lyle, they were all my favourite golfers, and they were playing on what was then called the European Tour, and you had the PGA Tour, and largely those superstars played the majority of their golf on the European Tour. But every now and again they crossed the pond and they went and played on in some big PGA Tour events, and those tour events were elevated because all of a sudden, Seve, Greg Norman, the American big players at the time, Curtis Strange, Payne Stewart, whoever it might be, they were all playing together, and those events were elevated. So I actually think if they can come to some kind of an agreement where the Liv Tour runs and does its thing, and the PGA Tour, which is an amazing tour, and we must preserve the PGA Tour and its history, it's very important. They run concurrently maybe, but every now and again throughout the season, we have some co-sanctioned events where everyone plays together. Now, I don't know whether that's possible for them to come to an agreement that involves that, but if that happened, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. Please get in the comments and let me know what you think the best solution is for professional golf. You may think that it's the best thing that could happen is that the Saudis just pull all the funding and Liv Golf just goes away and we go back. You may agree with what I've said. You may think that, you may think, I'll be very surprised, but you may think that actually the best thing is that Liv continues to grow and get bigger and bring in that new, younger audience to golf. I don't know. Get in the comments, let me know what you think the best solution would be for bringing it all back together. Right, on to the subject of this podcast, which was, I think I know who the next big signing Liv is going to make from the PGA Tour. So this is obviously dependent on they don't come to an agreement. From what I can see right now, I can't see them coming to an agreement before the start of next season. They still seem to be worlds apart. So it's suffice to think that we're going to go into next season with the game of professional golf still divided, with the Liv and the PGA Tour doing their own thing. Now, if that is the case, Liv's modus operandi has been to just keep taking some of the PGA Tour's assets to just remind them that if they don't actually come to an agreement soon and this carries on, that they're just going to keep stripping them of their major players. And, you know, television ratings are absolutely through the floor on the PGA Tour, and Liv isn't getting any television ratings at all. Their events seem to be getting a bit more traction. There does seem to be some bigger crowds attending their events on the ground, but with no TV contract and no real kind of structure to their media program, you know, they are not attracting any kind of viewing figures at all, really. So this is not good for the golf fan whatsoever. But, you know, I think that Liv will try and poach another big name player, and I believe it's going to be this guy, Hideki Matsuyama. Now, the reason for that is there's some very strong rumours that Liv Golf is going to have an event in Japan next year. Now, for those who don't know, Japan is a massive golfing market, and within Japan, Hideki Matsuyama is a sporting god. Not a golfing god, he's a sporting god. If you get Hideki Matsuyama on your tour, like the PGA Tour have now, you guarantee every time he plays in an event some very, very large viewing figures within the continent and the country of Japan. Now, because of the way the PGA Tour is structured, Hideki doesn't play in every PGA Tour event because obviously there's so many within a season that they can't play in them all, so they pick and choose, and they usually play in the big ones, and they will get massive viewing figures in Japan. One of the strengths of Liv, which I think they never lean into, is that every time you do tune into a Liv event, if you choose to do so, you are guaranteed that every single player is playing every single time, guaranteed. It's a strength of Liv Golf. So that would mean if they did sign Hideki Matsuyama, then they would be guaranteeing getting some big viewing audiences and probably sign some kind of TV contract in Japan. And they would get huge eyes on their product in Japan and start to grow in that part of the world. Now, it's been rumoured that Hideki has turned down a massive signing on bonus in the past, but as we saw with Jon Rahm, the signing on bonuses have just got bigger and bigger. So I think that Liv Golf is going to throw a huge amount of money at Hideki Matsuyama to go and grab that Japanese market. And I think it's going to be very hard for him to turn down, and very hard for the PGA Tour to fight against, because it'll just be such an obscene amount of money that they just can't compete. Yes, they brought in the Strategic Sports Group and offering them equity, but that is not money up front. It's not, Hideki, here's 500 million just to come and sign on the dotted line. You know, that's the sort of money that we could be talking about here. So, what do you think? As always with this podcast, I want you to all get in the comments. Let me know whether you think I'm absolutely crazy and there's no way that Hideki Matsuyama is going to go to Liv Golf, or do you actually think that someone else might be the one to go? One thing's for sure, Liv Golf is going to try and sign another major player in this off-season, and I think it's going to be Hideki Matsuyama. Okay, that's it for this first episode of the podcast. I want to try and keep these podcasts nice and short and sweet so they're easily digestible. Next week, I'm not sure what it's going to be about yet, but it will land in your subscription to Scratch at 50 on Thursday. So please, if you are a new viewer, please hit that subscribe, hit that like. It's very much appreciated. I'll try and keep the content coming as regularly as I possibly can. So, until next time, when I see you in the next podcast.